Hello and welcome to another video. I'm glad you're here. This is Jenna from McGuire, and today I thought I'd share with you one of my favorite things to do with cards, and that is to add stitch details. So stitching is something that I enjoy doing. I used to cross stitch as a kid, and I've done a video where I do a lot of stitching on my cards, and I'll link to that here so you can check it out. But today is just about adding a few stitch details. What I like to do is do all of my stamping at home, and then I can take my coloring and stitching on the road. So this is something that's easy to take on the go. Now this video was supposed to be part of a card making therapy blog hop that happened a few weeks ago. However, I had a death in the family, so I couldn't participate in the blog hop at the last minute, but I wanted to share my video with you today and recommend that you go check out this blog hop. Amanda at Little Crafty Pill, she put this blog hop together to talk about some struggles she has going on in her life and how card making has helped her through. I will provide a link for her site and the blog hop in my YouTube description below. I really encourage you to check it out because I know many of us have our struggles. Some of them are huge struggles, some of them are small struggles, but they're struggles nonetheless. And I really think card making or crafting can be extremely therapeutic. Now, to be honest, I have personally struggled with depression in my life. It's something that I talk about pretty openly because I think it's important to let people know they're not alone, because sometimes it really can feel like you are. So for me, card making is helpful with that. But what really is therapeutic for me is stitching. Whenever I can make a little time for stitching, I just feel so calm and at peace. So what I like to do is do my stamping at home, and then I can take my coloring and my stitching on the road. And that's really helped me deal with my depression and anxiety issues. So find whatever is most therapeutic for you and focus on that. I feel like this is something that we all need to talk about and be open with so that we don't feel so alone in this world. Okay, so let's get into that card making with stitching. I have several examples for you today. I'm going to start with this one first. Now this uses a stamp and die from Pinkfresh Studios. It's called Say It with Floral. These are so clever because what you do is you die cut the background and then you stamp the images into the openings of that die cut background. So it really creates the perfect little window on your card. Now these would be fantastic for shaker cards or window cards. I'm just going to do a basic card with it. Now there are many little simple layering images in this set. I'm going to go ahead and take all of them off so I'm ready to do my stamping. Now this would be a good one to use a stamping tool and just stamp a bunch of them at once. Then you can take your stitching on the go. However, I'm just going to do one example today, so I'm using my acrylic block. So I'm stamping each of the images into their little spots on the card. I'm using Gina inks today. You could use absolutely any inks for this. I've been using her inks a lot lately because I always seem to get perfect results. So they're the ones I reach for first. So I'm stamping all of these images. Now you can follow the key on the packaging for where each image goes, or you can kind of do your own thing. I did follow the packaging key. However, I did add a few little leaves here and there just for some added details. So I can go through and stamp all of the base images. Then I go through and I stamp with a slightly darker ink the next layer of images on each of these. So here you can see I'm stamping with a darker blue to the center of the flowers, and then I'll use a darker green on each of the leaves. Now there are additional stamp layer images in this set that I didn't use because I'm going to instead add the stitch details. And keep in mind that this stitch detail technique really can work with any stamps you have. You can easily find a way to add little details of stitches or French knots anywhere on a card, and it adds some simple texture. And there's something about stitching that really adds to the homemade feel of the card. So now that I have all of my stamping done, it's time to do the stitching. And I'll talk about the threads and needles I use as we go along. And you can see the little details here to the center of the flowers, the leaves, and then just little scattered knots on the card. So I'm threading my needle here with some Pearl Cotton DMC floss. That's what I happen to have on hand the day that I was making these at a crafty retreat, but you could use a variety of threads. So what I'm doing is I'm putting my cardstock on a piece of craft foam so that I can easily pierce my needle through anywhere I want my stitching to be. I find it easier to poke all the holes first and then do the stitching as opposed to creating the holes as I go. So here I'm just adding stitches to the center of my leaves. So I've poked all of my holes here. I can thread my thread through the first hole, and I'm taping the end of that thread on the back with some double-sided tape because that's what I had on hand. However, you can use a small piece of Scotch tape if you prefer. So I'm going up one hole and down the next, and I'm repeating that until I have a little stitch in the center of all of my leaves. Now there are many types of stitches out there. I recommend doing maybe a YouTube search on other stitches. The only two that I'm using today are simple stitches like a back stitch and French knots, which I'll do in a moment. Be sure to check out that other video I did on stitching if you want to learn more about these stitches. Also about the different threads. I talk about that in the other video too. Again, I use the size 5 DMC pearl cotton thread just because that's what I like the best. But you could use cross-stitch thread for this. That's usually like a 6-ply thread, and you could use just 3 of them to kind of make it thinner if you want to. But I'll link to some of the recommended ones that I like. So now it's time to do some French knots. So I'm just poking one hole for each knot that I want. Decided to use yellow thread for this, and I'm going to tape the end to the back. Now this is how you do the French knot, and I'll do it a few times so you can see. You wrap the thread right around your needle at the base of the thread, then put the needle back into the same hole, and then you kind of tighten that string around your needle, and then you just pull the needle through, and you end up with this cute little knot. So I'm going to do that a few times. So I come up from the back of the paper through the hole. Now I'm going to wrap the thread around my needle right close to the paper. I'm going to put the needle back into the same hole, tighten the string around the needle, and then we have our little French knot once I pull it through. I think these little French knots add a lot of fun texture to your card. I like to scatter a few around my card as accents, and then also do a cluster of them maybe like at the center of the flowers. So you can see how this would be easy to do on the go. All you have to do is bring your stamped pieces, some thread, a needle, and some scissors, and you can do your stitching just about anywhere. And I'll have a bunch of examples for you at the end of this video. But let's finish this one up first. I have a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch top folding pool colored note card here. I'm centering my stitched piece right on the center of the card, placing the thank you sentiment right in the center, and then I will stamp that with Versamark ink and white heat emboss. I find the MISTI very helpful in getting sentiments perfectly centered on my cards because that's something I struggle with normally. So after I have this heat embossed, I can add my stamped and stitched panel right on top. Now I want to add some dimension with this, so I'm going to use a whole lot of foam tape on the back of this so I can be sure it holds up through the mail. And again, this card design would be great for a shaker card or window card if you wanted to do that instead. So now I can just place this on top and I have my completed card. I did add a little wink of Stella to some of the flowers so they have some shimmer to them. And I think between that shimmer and the stitch detail, we added a lot to a pretty simple card design with these beautiful stamps and dies. Now this coral card here is the same design, and I just changed up the sentiment in the inside. I created this one at a crafty retreat a couple weeks ago, and you can see the detail that I added with a few simple stitches and a handful of French knots. I think it would be fun to do several of these cards in different colors and create a card set as a gift. Now I did want to show you that the sentiments on both of these are from that same Say It with Floral stamp set that I used on the card. So I have a bunch of examples to share with you, all using simple stitches and French knots. I created these at a crafty retreat a few weeks ago, and I thought I would go ahead and share them all here just so you can see how much fun these added stitch details can be. Now for this first example, I added a bunch of French knots to this. I added a red French knot to each red berry and a cluster of knots to the center of the flowers. Now on the smaller berries, I added tiny little drops of silver Nouveau drops. In between these little drops and the knots, we have a lot of texture going on this one little piece. Now for this, I used the Merry and Bright stamp and die from Pinkfresh Studio. You can see in this stamp set there are lots of images and lots of sentiments, so you can build up a great card. However, I decided to use a Hugs sentiment from this Birch press just because stamp set. I like this stamp set because there are coordinating dies for those large cursive words that you can get. And then there's basic sentiments that you can use on the inside of the card too. You can even use stitch details on background stamps. Here I stamped and colored this floral background and added French knot details in any of the white openings in the background. The video it's kind of hard to capture the texture and detail you get with these stitched French knots, but in real life it's beautiful. And then I just did a black Nouveau drop at the center of each flower. Now the stamp set that I used for this is the Pinkfresh Studio's Floral Background stamp set. This is a beautiful one that you could use for a variety of style of cards. I made a bold and colorful one, but you could make a really elegant, soft card with this background. The sentiment is from the Simply Succulents stamp set. I really like the sentiments in the Pinkfresh Studio stamp sets because they're handwritten, so they're really unique and are great for center point on your card. Now this one is just so cute, and I plan to make a bunch of these because they were quick and easy and just adorable. Here I stamped a little dog, kitty, and floral, and I just stamped them with solid ink and then added Wink of Stella shimmer on top. Then I did a French knot in the center of each of the flowers and tied a little bow around the kitty's neck. Now these images are from the Pinkfresh Studio's Playful Animals 2 stamp set. I really love this stamp set, and there's actually a Playful Animals 1 stamp set that I just ordered too. So this is a very simple card, but by adding those stitch details, it really makes a big difference on these cute little animals. And by the way, I will give you a link to my blog where I'll have photos of all these cards so you can get a closer look at each. Next we have the unicorn card. I had so much fun making this one. I stamped it and colored it and added lots of shimmer with my Wink of Stella. And then I added some stitch details to the flowers that are stamped on the unicorn. You can see I did some basic stitches and some French knots, and it really adds a lot to that card. That texture is so much fun. This is the Pinkfresh Studio's Unicorn Dreams stamp set. There's a coordinating die set, but I didn't use it on today's card. And you can see that the stamp set has lots of other little images that could be used with it or separately. The Make-A-Wish sentiment is from the Playful Animals Friends 2 stamp set that I just showed you. Here's another example where I just added a few French knots for accents. So on this one, I used a stamp and die set that go together from Pinkfresh Studios. I die cut it, stamped it, colored it, and then added the little French knot details. Now here is a look at the stamp set and die from Pinkfresh Studios. It's called Let's Celebrate. You can see they have several of these stamp and die combos that work nice to create window cards or shaker cards. And then the sentiment, once again, is from the Playful Animals Friends 2 stamp set. Now this next example shows again how little clusters of French knots can add a lot to a simple card. Here I stamped and colored a wreath. Then I stamped and die cut some little leaves that I could add on for dimension. Then I did a few little French knots for berries. Really makes a big difference on this card. The stamp set that I use is from Reverse Confetti. Really like this stamp set. I just had to buy it. And the sentiment says, "Giving thanks for your kindness," which is just a wonderful sentiment. And I white heat embossed that in the center. So again, you can just look at any stamp sets you have because I bet you have things that would work great for adding stitch details. Now on this one, I didn't do any stitching. Instead, I just used a piece of string to tie a bow, and I glued it right at the base of the deer's neck. So if you aren't into stitching, you can always add little details with bows if you prefer. For this card, I used the Pinkfresh Studios Forest Friends stamp and die. You can see how it has lots of elements that build together to create a cute little forest scene. And again, you could create a wonderful shaker card with this if you wanted to. So there are my examples for adding stitch details to your cards. This is really addictive and something that I just find so therapeutic. I hope you will give it a try. Inexpensive too, which makes it even better. Now, if you are interested in the supplies I use, I link them below in my YouTube description, but go to my blog because I'll have photos of all these cards and links to some other helpful things. I appreciate you watching. If you haven't done so, please hit that subscribe button, and I'd love it if you gave this a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Hope to see you back soon, and have a great day.
Hi, this is Lila. I like to stamp and color too. I hope you have a great day.